Life Imprints podcast, legacy stories that live beyond. Turn up the volume on today's riveting story with your host, Kenny Mauck, at kennymauck.com, and leave your life imprint with your legacy story.
Welcome back to our podcast. And today I have a very special, dear friend and someone who has a great story. His name is Steve Hornsby. Not the musician, but a guy that is really, he's really a super guy in terms of helping businesses, helping men, helping people kind of think through life. And I'm just looking forward to sharing with him and him sharing with us today. Steve, welcome.
Kenny, thank you, man.
Yeah, Steve, I was going to ask you. You know, you were born and raised in a place called Bolivar, Tennessee. Is that right?
That's right. Small town.
Tell us about Bolivar and how that's had influence on your life.
Well, we could take up the whole podcast probably, but Bolivar, Tennessee is a small town about an hour east of Memphis in West Tennessee. Population about 5,000, and it was like sort of like being in an incubator almost when I grew up there, because I was surrounded by, I'm an only child, but I was surrounded by 32 first cousins, and that's just on my father's side of the family. About another 20 cousins on my mother's side of the family.
A big family.
Yes, 10 sets of aunts and uncles on either side of the family, and all that, grandparents and what have you, and I think probably the most significant thing was that I was surrounded by love. I always knew that I was loved and cared for, and lovingly disciplined when I needed it at the appropriate time. But the family that I grew up in we were open huggers. We hadn't seen each other in a while. No hesitation to hug, just like you and I did, a while ago.
Sure.
And that was very, very significant. But also back in that era, late 50s and through the 60s, in a small town like that, kids could roam freely. Nowadays they call it free range kids or whatever in the cities, and parents are experimenting with this. Well, that's the way that I grew up, and that's the way my friends and I, get out of school 3 o'clock in the afternoon, hit your bicycle, go home and check in for a minute, grab a cookie, and man, you're out the door, and the rule was you had to be back in time for supper.
Very affirming community.
Absolutely. Yeah. Affirming. I learned love, and I learned freedom.
Wow. Steve, I'm not just here to throw flowers at you. But I want to tell you something. You're very you're one of the most gracious and inspiring men that I know in this respect. You have such honor and respect for everybody who comes into your influence or your circle of influence or around you as a person. And what I'd like to know is what drives you. What are those things that you believe that if you were to leave this earth, what are the things that you want to say, hey Kenny, I'm leaving, these are the things I hope and pray that I've been able to bring influence and to impart and to impress and to put imprints in someone else's heart that will mean a significant amount of my lifetime, of my life's work, measure of work. What is it that and maybe that's your wife, maybe that's your family. What is it that you want to leave your family, your friends, and cohorts about Steve Hornsby?
Well, thanks, Kenny. Thank you for all those flowery words that you threw at me, and I really do appreciate that. That's very kind. I don't know that I'm deserving of all that, because I certainly do have my shadow and my warts that pop up too, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Honestly, I think the most important thing is that the people that I have been around and spent time with in my life, my wife, my children, my extended family, my close friends, is that we've created the experience with each other where we can tell each other when we're with each other or over the telephone, I love you, and mean it. And where we can honestly say that and mean it with each other and know that really is what we mean. For me, the most important thing that we can do is to share, is to be a vessel for love. And I'm not talking about romantic love. I mean, I know you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
But the agape love, the ability to have compassion, understanding, giving people a second chance, and also being honest. Not being a wallflower or being a throw rug for people to trample on, but being able to speak up and be honest. But to be able to model the way of saying, I'm going to live a life that's based in love, and not be ashamed of it. And I'll tell you, out there in the world nowadays, it's becoming increasingly harder. When I grew up in that small town I was telling you about earlier, it was a lot easier. I didn't realize, it's kind of like, the fish doesn't know he's swimming in water. I didn't know that's what I was swimming in, and at that time. The older that I've gotten, the further I've gotten away from that, and the more I see how the world is now, where it's so polarized in so many ways.
Absolutely.
It's more important now than ever that whatever field that we're in, there is a way to bring the heart of caring and compassion and love into that. Yeah. Sometimes love has to be tough, and you have to tell somebody, I don't think this is a right fit. I'm afraid we're not going to be able to make things work going forward. We may have to let you go on sabbatical or take a break, or maybe go find another career. But I will say this, I've been able to do even terminations with people in a way that was kind and still left them empowered to a degree, hopefully where they could see it as an opportunity. Yeah. I think we have to exorcise those shadow elements of ourselves out to where we don't have that mean streak left in us anymore. I had a mean streak when I was younger, but I came to see that that's not the way. And so that there's that. And then I think that it's like with organizations, using things that help create the environment for people to build positive relationships. My mother, you ask about the biggest influence, my mother taught me something. She told me this when I was in my mid-20s. The most important thing in the world are relationships. The most powerful thing in the world is love.
That is powerful. Well, what I'm sensing, we'll close on this, but I'm sensing what Steve is saying is integrity. There's a lot of integrity in what you're saying. In other words, don't be somebody you're not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That if there's anything I think about Steve Hornby, you're going to get what you get from Steve Hornby. That is, you're gonna be out there. You're going to give, just as Christ has given us to us. I think that's your strongest suit, is that people are drawn to you because of your love, and I think that you're right. In even we got a good friend, Mark White. He is the epitome of this too, and that is bringing people of different political persuasions together for prayer or for a time of circle, so to speak. And I think that's your influence. I think that's what's your forte, and I just cannot thank you enough today. This broadcast and podcasting today.
Life Imprints Podcast. Legacy stories that live beyond. Turn up the volume on today's riveting story with your host, Kenny Mauck, at KennyMauck.com. And leave your life imprint with your legacy story.